and predetermined acts that we do, these are the development of corresponding thoughts in our subconscious. And over a period of time, they finally get such a hold on us and a hold on that person that it changes your whole character, and it leaves kind of permanent imprint. Well, not permanent, but it makes a forcible imprint on your subconscious. And you start doing everything that way. If a person has a habit all the time, perhaps, of presenting information and acting rather silly or laughing or whatever, then the cause of that can actually, you can get to that cause. All these little insignificant thoughts, dreams, and fantasies, they're nourished daily and they're reinforced until they become like demons inside of us and kind of rule our actions. And if you think it's humorous always to say something like Elmer Fudd or make funny things, people talk funny and they do it all the time, you know. If we take that too far, we begin to look at someone like that like they're possessed almost with this concept, like they can't talk any other way, and it becomes almost an irritation. Well, you can get rid of those things. We can destroy these little build-up ideas in ourselves. We can take away the strength from them actually altogether. And you can do this by taking away the idea which caused them originally. You want to rethink a thought and kind of relive it and take it away. Take the strength out of it altogether. Thoughts form our lives. If we think a rich, happy life, we can have one. If we persist in negative and destructive thinking, it's also going to take over our lives and control our future, either way that we want to go. Ancient wisdom says that the master of destiny is man himself. So true. Okay? As you can see here, the overall scheme of what I'm trying to talk about is taking control of your thoughts and learning to control them through well-defined exercises, implanting new thoughts into your mind, new experiences. Think of those who think with strong concentration. They form their life and they obtain great happiness, don't they? When you see successful people, they're generally well balanced. They're people that kind of go straight ahead. They seem very lucky. They usually kind of glow and they're happy and they're forceful. They have a certain concentration to them. They're always focused on where they're going and what they want to accomplish. Other people, on the other hand, seem to think just the opposite. We have a lot of people who continually are thinking kind of negatively towards life. They seem to always be kind of depressed and disappointed on how things are going and have a general attitude like, gee, life's just so difficult and things are hard for them. Well, that also controls their future, doesn't it? That's just the way things do go for them because that's how they're programming themselves. It's just simply not possible to form any kind of viable philosophy of life if you think negatively, depressed, if you're selfish or faint-hearted sort of person. Because what happens is you develop failures in life, and then one failure in life after another reinforces the idea that your life is a failure. Pretty soon you're convinced of it. Your subconscious becomes programmed to thinking you are a failure, and what do you know you are? Remember, we are what we think. So be careful what you think of yourself, what you think about, and what you project, because these things happen. It's also possible to create kind of a spiritual vertigo. Vertigo meaning from high places you lose your balance and you start getting dizzy and you want to fall off the side of a building or whatever. This can be caused really by this failure syndrome. If you spend too much time thinking in that way where life is always failures and you don't really see how you're ever going to get ahead, at a certain point, you will kind of consume yourself with that kind of negative thinking. And it pulls you kind of into a large abyss or hole of thinking that's thought of as spiritual vertigo. A child, by the way, when a child comes into life and they're not yet aware of danger and spiritual effect overcomes danger with kind of a playful certainty sort of thing, they can see something dangerous could be happening. They don't know about it, so they don't react with fear. A pessimist, however, out of pure naked fear and anxiety, almost or even abruptly, loses any power of resistance and succumbs to the danger, where a child would just playfully fix it, whatever. So you can see when we come into life, we don't have all that programming yet. We haven't built up all of our fears and pessimism and disappointments and so forth. Our subconscious is not filled with all of that programming. So if we find ourselves in life like that, or we're not getting ahead, and we're not going really where we want to go, then reprogramming the subconscious is a pretty good idea, isn't it? Okay? It's the fear. If you're pessimistic and you create fear, then it's just, it just keeps kind of snowballing. You're afraid things aren't going to work. They don't work because you were afraid of it. Then you convince, yep, I was right. I can't do this. And then you get, you instill it even farther. So stop that. Only the man who scorns death escapes it. but the despondent one will collect it. It's another old proverb I dug up from someplace. A fearful man and a spiritual failure will never master life, because fear, spiritual indifference, and inactivity over time will destroy all inner security and all will for the positive life. Your inner security, that inner feeling of self-reliance, of confidence that you get from the positive things that happen, the power that you build up, that inner security is the basic requirement for a good formation and utilization of the spirit and the life. It's like building blocks. You know, one of the first things you always want to do when you're off on something is to gain information so you're confident that you can learn it. And then you learn things in steps, just like we do in school, don't we? Again, when you're a freshman, you don't start studying the senior books. You work on the freshman things and you build up to something. We don't get ahead of ourselves. So when you're building the power of your spirit, it's the same way. We first want to develop that inner security, the feeling of confidence that comes from knowledge. Whatever a person's in love with, into that he will be transformed, it says in Billy's book. And that's very true. When an idea takes hold over a person, it then transforms your whole essence, your whole life, and as a result of that spiritual influence. So if you find yourself actually in love with a person, an idea, whatever, you become consumed with that, don't you? And many times we can confuse love with need and other things, and then we kind of dump this, to use a word, on other people, and we can get slightly misled. This is something we need to be kind of careful with. It's through the constant schooling of the spiritual self that we rise to the highest quality of our lives. We need to constantly reinforce our spiritual self, that it's doing well, that it's okay. We build up this power of thinking, of being positive, of being confident. And once we do that, we add new knowledges and new experiences to it. And we're starting to create a very self-reliant, confident person that can accomplish anything that they want. To do this, we have to be willing to burst through the bounds of our current ego and so forth, and all the environmental pressures. We have to work on being happy and work on the development of building our spirit based on logic and wisdom. This is why earlier on the meditation tape I spent so much effort talking about pure and keen observation, seeing things exactly as they are, because that's what wisdom is, isn't it? Seeing things really the way they are, having real knowledge about something. If you want to really learn something about yourself, you have to be willing to painstakingly reflect on yourself, really see yourself as from an outside point of view almost, step outside of yourself, and really be very honest with yourself. And there's no one else listening, so you can do that. Be very honest with yourself and see exactly what your problems are, what you're reacting to, and where you want to go. And work on developing that. This is why in self-help programs quite often we'll see where they talk about role modeling, where you will see yourself the way you want to, maybe even paint a picture of yourself on the wall, well-dressed, successful. They want you to start visualizing, the way that you see yourself. And what happens is your mind just starts doing that. And they're correct. When you start putting force into that vision of yourself, you'll start acting that way. You'll start spending more time developing habits that lead you into thinking and acting that way. You'll change the way you dress, the way you talk and act. You develop a new self. The important thing is, as you do this, that you don't want to develop a new Frankenstein either. You want to make sure that you develop the correct self, the real you. Not some fantasy that someone thinks that you should be like, and not your version of Cary Grant or whoever it may be, or Marilyn Monroe or whatever. You want to develop yourself to its maximum potential. But you have control over who yourself is. So that's where the honesty and integrity comes in with yourself. When you add new things to your personality, make sure you're adding things that are correct and right for you, not someone else's idea of what they think you should be. And when you do that, bring in new information that you're going to add to yourself and be honest with it. Okay? That's where keen observation comes in. Really observe information, even the things that you're hearing from me. For every 10 things I may say, one of them may be registered good for you. Some of the others may be of no use. Some of them may not either make sense or might even seem incorrect to you at this time based on how you're thinking. But if there are among the things I'm saying, if there are things that inspire and stimulate you, if there's information among here that you need at the moment that's good for you on your path, that's great. Make sure you understand it clearly. Don't take my word for it. Don't take what I say for granted. Don't even assume that I'm actually right about everything. I may not be. It's important that you go out and try it for yourself. Test out ideas. See them for exactly what they are. Just because Billy believed it and I learned it and it makes sense to me, I'm speaking now from my experiences and how I view things. You want to be able to do the same for yourself. So don't ever just accept things, just because someone tells you. Find your own truth. Make your own experiences. Listen and read to material and dissect it like a doctor under a microscope. Examine it carefully, listen to every word, and see what it really means to you, because it's your subconscious, it's your psyche that you're affecting when you allow information to come in. Again, this goes back to our books and movies and films and things in our environment. We affect people greatly when we put all sorts of trash on the screen and in our papers and our magazines and so forth. You can't leave pictures of violence and people being naked and sick and so forth out there for people to see without it having some effect. The well-balanced person can cope with it fairly well and just kind of shrugs it off. The uninitiated, the people who are out of balance with problems, the children who are still have these virgin minds that are absorbing things like sponges, they take it all in, and it definitely has an effect on them. And all of these things serve to form who we are, and we have to deal with this information. This is definitely why eventually in our society we're going to reach the point where we take that element of trash out of our society, where violences in porn and so forth are no longer shown, because they do affect people. So we have to get that out of our society. Kind of an interesting paradox I just thought of that's kind of funny is that around the world there are people like Billy and other people, gurus, masters, and so forth, who are what we call the thinkers of our world. These are people that are sitting around and they're contemplating existence. They're working on new ideas. They're working on their spirituality. They're trying to solve the mysteries of life, and they're delving into their spirit. They're using the spirit to try to build new self. They're providing new explanations and inspirations, like I hope that I am, to people. And quite often, though, the mainstream world out there thinks that we're a little off of it, or that we're a little nuts. Mostly that's because of numbers. There's more of them than there are of us. So they tend to look at us like we're the oddballs, when in fact it's just the other way around, isn't it? The people that are striving for truth in life, whether they're hitting the mark or not, they're trying. The ones that are striving to try to make themselves better, that they're trying to improve the quality of their life. If you take this path yourself, or if you're currently working on it, have the strength of conviction and knowing that you're right for yourself, that you're on your own path of evolution, you're discovering things for yourself, and it's important to you, irregardless of what somebody else thinks out there, especially in the American society where, numbers are not necessarily right. Might is not right, as they say in the military at any rate. It is not necessarily so. So have the strength of conviction to go out there and be a thinker and go look for things. Too many people depend on other sources of information for their might, for their right. This is what I have against cults and beliefs and formula groups and some kinds of religions and so forth, where people give up. They don't search for any new knowledge of their own. They accept the idea that some other higher source or outside source is going to take care of all their problems for them. They are not responsible for themselves. And that's where I have trouble going along with these ideas, because I'm a firm believer that we must all be responsible for ourselves and our own growth. We have to learn to take care of our own problems. If we did that, we would have fewer problems in our country, in our cities, communities, and in our own minds. So what life is all about is learning responsibility for ourselves and the world that we live in. We can't expect some other person, belief, God, or whatever it's going to be to take care of these things for us, because they don't. All too often also I find that people who think like that, who are expecting someone else to take care of those things for them, they just don't want to admit that they're responsible for who they are. They look at their life and they're not that happy with it, whatever, and they like to blame it on somebody else. Like, how often have you heard someone say that, well, that's just the way that God wanted it. I guess it just didn't work out, but that's what He wanted. It didn't have anything to do with their effort. Of course not. They have to blame it on somebody else. And I think that's like a problem in our society. So even though I give everybody